All right. Welcome to this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. I'm your host, Will Christensen, and this is sponsored by Seller Labs, the number one tool for early sellers to just get involved. And Daniel is no exception to this. Daniel, you were an early seller using Seller Labs, right?
Oh yeah, it was literally the first Amazon tool I ever used back in I think 2017. First tool that existed too, which was cool.
So we're pretty good at those early Amazon sellers. That's why we're here. Daniel, I'm excited about this. Our listeners already know the gauntlet I'm about to put you through in terms of tough questions. Why would an Amazon seller or an e-commerce seller who's looking to monetize their mental capital be interested in hearing from you?
That's a great question. Look, I've sold over $3 billion worth of product on Amazon. I started an agency a month before COVID, and now we have 38 employees. We're on a $10 million track right now in terms of run rate. And so, Bezos per Bezos, that's all I have to say when it comes to Amazon here.
I love that. I think my favorite part about your entire story there is, let me know, would you give me a heads up when you go to invest in some big stock? Because your timing on choosing, like, I'm going to start an e-commerce agency 1 month before the world has a literal pandemic that forces everyone inside and puts everyone's e-commerce operations to the test, because we're now my 80-year-old grandma is buying crap online, and she did before, but now she's really buying it online because she can't go to the grocery store anymore. So, well done on that timing, sir.
Yeah, no, I am a very high risk, high reward person, and it seems to have worked out. Look at my crypto portfolio. It's the same thing.
Okay, wait. So hold on. Let's look at that risk for just a second. You said 1 month before COVID, like 2020. We all remember 2020. If you ever read the New York Times year in review stuff, or the Wall Street Journal, I can't even remember who does it now. Anyway, I was reading one of those year in reviews, and the guy goes, to all other years, because the way he does it, he actually addresses the year as if it's a person. To all other years we have ever complained about, that we have ever discouraged or disparaged, we apologize to you. 2020 has shown us an entirely new level of low, and we apologize for making you feel that you were anything less than amazing, because 2020 has shown us. Then it goes on to show the insanity that was 2020. So it's burned into all of our memories. So I got to know, what month did you actually start this venture?
Oh, I quit my job officially at the last month of January, or the end of January, and then we started in February. And I remember
that's when it was hitting the news that China was having
it was a cold, right? It was a cold back
China
then.
was having a cold going on, and lots of people were getting sick. My grandma, she comes to me and she says, Will, this is going to spread, and we got to get our crap in order and go buy all the toilet paper. It was like this. And then I was like, Grandma, that's not going to happen. And then a month and a half later, we were quarantined, and she was like,
hold yourself. See? Yeah. So that happened. So February, I'm feeling really good. That was the first conference. Me and my business partner, I think we're going to go to Prosper or something like that. And it got canceled.
Oh, yeah. It totally got, I was going to speak that year. It totally just got right on the money.
Yep. So that was when, the name
was it's gonna close. It's not gonna close. It's gonna close. It's not gonna close. It wasn't until the week before that they were like, dang it, we're gonna have to cancel this.
Yeah, no, it was the week of. It was literally a couple days before the event, I remember. And then that's when the panic started to set in a little bit. I try to be a positive person, and I think that's something that helps me a lot from an entrepreneurial standpoint. But there was days where I'm sweating.
I need to sit in that seat with you for a second. You quit. Were you making six figures when you quit? Oh my gosh.
Most amount of money I'd ever made in my life.
Six-figure job. You quit your six-figure job end of January. You're like, I am starting an agency for e-commerce businesses. I'm on top of the world. Hey, you're going in, and then the world starts to turn upside down slowly. And by the craziest thing is how fast that was. 45 days. And we were in total lockdown quarantine, like
Essentials
pandemonium.
only on Amazon, even. Like we couldn't even sell non-essentials. So that cut out 80% of the sellers on Amazon. I couldn't even like reach out, or I was talking to, but it was like well, when your sales open up, let's talk about it, right? Inventory limits, it was like a perfect storm of everything that could possibly happen hit.
Well, and in this adversity, I mean, so I gotta ask, you're getting into the middle of that panic mode of like, what the shiz did I just do? Like, how much did I? Because you probably put some away to like figure out, okay, if I'm going to start this business, you put some away before you did that. But you're looking at your reserves like,
Oh no, it was getting dwindling before we landed our first client. I remember that.
Okay. So wait, when did you land your first client?
Our first client was during the summer. I want to say,
oh my gosh, dude, Daniel, this is unreal. So literally like March, you're peeing your pants because you haven't landed a client yet. You have 4 more months before you're gonna land a client. And oh my gosh. So what I gotta know is in that moment of adversity when you were like, I'm gonna monetize my mental capital. I get why you jumped out of the Brit. Like we're gonna talk about that for a second because like you literally had the entrepreneurial seizure of like, I'm gonna quit this and go do this thing. Holy crap. So you're sitting there in that moment. When you're in that moment of adversity, did you stop and think this is gonna be okay? Because now everybody's buying online, or was it too dark to consider?
I would say it was too dark at the time. I think what did kick off is once we started closing deals, we closed a lot very quickly, right? So a flood did hit, and that was the overwhelming sensation that definitely made me feel like this entire time was worth it. But there was some, I'd say even dark times during the 5 months where I'm like, one, you start the doubt hits, right? And it's like, should I have done this, right? Am I even capable, right? And it was self-doubt where it's like, I never had that self-doubt up until the point where like the time made it where I literally just couldn't land a client, right? Because of COVID physically, right? But I did doubt myself personally for a little bit.
Oh my gosh. I can't even right now. Like the just hearing you describe, like I remember how hard it was for me. And I was in the middle of a business and it COVID hit. We were okay. Like they came out with all the relief stuff and we applied for a lot of that and got stuff figured out. I was running data automation, which is a boutique automation service as a service. And they do all sorts of like tracking information and inventory information, syncing back and forth between different systems, think Zapier, but more complicated. I looked at it and eventually I think it was like April or May. I was like, wait a minute. The e-commerce sellers, because there were a couple of guys, like some of my clients, because I had a view into several different e-commerce businesses. Some of them went through the freaking roof. Like I got one guy, guess what he sells? You ready for this? He sells these.
Yeah.
That guy. So for those of you that are listening, I'm holding up a pair of Jabra Evolve 75 a headset. This thing is the most amazing. Like I'll endorse it till my dying day. I own currently like 5 pairs of it because I buy a new one every year. It's like a $380 headset, but it's worth it. Dang good headset. Rolando Rosas from Global Tech sells it. And his business, like best month he'd ever had was March of 2020. And I don't know if he's actually beat that even to this day because all of a sudden everyone was working from home and everyone needed to drown out the 3-year-old and everyone needed like the need for a noise canceling headset that you could sound professional on anywhere through the roof.
That home cooking, like people selling pots, pans, like there's all sorts of little categories that all of a sudden
anything associated with dogs, like that nobody could travel anywhere. So everybody went and got a dog. Like there are so many weird things that happened in that 3-month period. So I remember mid-April thinking, oh, we're going to be okay because we just need to focus on the people who are exploding and we'll be okay. I remember like I didn't have 3 months of darkness to deal with or 4 months of darkness. How did you deal with that?
So I will say I have been entrepreneurial my whole life and have always had like I sold makeup door to door after college, right? I got a full ride to college, went to Pepperdine, thought I'd be good to go. Like, I'm a smart kid.
Okay, hold on. When's the first time you can remember monetizing mental capital? Back earlier than that. Like lemonade stands. My daughter sells charisma on the corner. She puts some charisma and lemonade, watery lemonade, in a bottle, and then she sells it for $20 a piece. I've seen her sell a freaking cup of watery lemonade for $20. And I'm like, kid, this is gonna be dangerous.
So if I really break it down, I did 3 high schools in a year and a half. So I was in New York, then we moved to where I switched like from private school to public school for 1 semester.
Okay.
And we moved to Arizona for 1 semester, and then I moved to Santa Monica for the rest of high school. So I did 3 high schools in a year and a half, and I remember like not wanting to eat lunch alone. Like that was something that I did not like.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think honestly, if I'm thinking about it, that was probably my first mental capital where I wasn't selling a product, I was selling myself, right? And I had to figure out how to like make friends, like honestly, quickly get people to like me quickly.
Dude,
And
that's interesting.
yeah, I thought about this a lot. I left SAMO as a transfer. I was the homecoming king, vice president of the school. So I figured it out, right?
And you were only there for 1 year.
I was there for 2 years or 2.5, but still it was I
Holy
school at
crap.
Tree Canton. Santa Monica is an interesting place to grow up, right? It's a cool town. So I had to figure out how to be cool, right? But that was my first mental
I
capital.
had to figure out how to be cool. I had to go sell my own personality, and honestly, that actually translates really. So right now, one of the things that I found is the guys who can figure out how to maintain some of that, like how I present myself,
Authenticity.
present myself as someone who wants to be followed, present myself as somebody who like you want to associate with me because I put myself out there in this way. Like that's a core skill. So I think it's interesting that you identified that as your first time in monetizing social in mental capital that turned social. Like that's like you transferred mental capital into social capital there and walked away very rich from a standpoint of your social capital.
Yeah,
As
and the interesting
homecoming
thing
king.
is that social capital will eventually help me to actually monetize real physical capital as well, right?
Okay. All right. So walk me down. So where'd you go from there? You got all the social capital, homecoming king, then what?
I always knew like, okay, I want to run something at some point in time, right? But I moved to San Diego, I'm selling makeup door to door, right? No company would even like respond to my job resumes because I didn't have digital marketing on my like an internship or anything, right? So I knew at one point, like when I moved here, my path kind of got laid where I was like, I need to get into digital because that's where I see every job posting is about digital marketing. So now I want to be a digital marketer, right? I get a job at shitty SEO company. I get paid $14.75 an hour, but I know that this
What
job
year is this?
2016, right? So I'm a year out of school ish. And I know like everybody at that first company would complain all the time, right? Because it's like, oh, the management, like the whole piece. My thing is, I'm like, I am not here for this company. I am here to learn a skill set.
I need a year of this company so
I
that
need a year
I
entitled.
can then go work somewhere else.
Exactly. Right. So I did that. When I got that first job, she's like, oh, you can get promoted. Like somebody just did it after a year and a half. After 4 months, the job opened up. I applied. I'm like, why can't I do this, piece or whatever? Got that promotion. And then now I had the title I needed to get into an actual spot. I could learn something, right? Because I was learning a little bit, but not as much as I needed to.
That's amazing. I actually quit a sales job selling media. I was selling newspaper advertising. This is 2000 and so I graduated in 2010, went and tried to do the media thing, did not work. I got the job 3 months later, got fired from the job, realized I did not want anything to do with sales, went to go, and same thing, everything was digital marketing. I could tell it was obvious. The newspaper's dying/dead. It's all about digital. And so I went to this digital advertising company that was looking for free interns. And I was like, I'm ready to work for free. And they're like, you have a degree. And I was like, I know. And they were like, are you sure you want? I was like, yes, I'm sure. And I was like, no, I will not sell. Okay, cool. And so I went in there and that's how I got my first job. I turned mental capital into social capital. And then they ended up hiring me and we went on the journey. But so very similar to you, like I just need
No, and
to earn my
love that
stripes.
you chase the learning, right? Like not the money. And that's the thing I tell, especially younger folks or like early days, like how do you get here? Like like you'll always have a chance to make more money, right? Especially once you have the skill set and the learnings, right? People can't take that away from you. But once you're an expert and you're invaluable, it's a lot easier to make money, how like whether that's working in house for somebody, whether that's starting your own thing. There's a lot more flexibility that becomes once I call it domain expertise, right? You're a domain
Nice.
expert. Come at me, baby. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. Okay, so you began to monetize that social capital by landing that job, by getting some of these pieces stuff set up. So then what happened?
So then like Quiverr University started. So there was a job called or a company called Quiverr. They're one of the first big authorized sellers, right? So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, so I went in there. I didn't even know what Amazon was. Amazon only had the sidebar advertising, like that gross. If you're OG enough, you know what I'm talking about. 5 cent CPC thing. I went into this Amazon job interview, Quiverr, and I actually had a job offer for double the amount of money, like in traditional advertising, right? But I went into this interview because I liked the way the job description was written, and I met with Ryan Mulvaney, this guy Mark, back in the day, and they were like, "Do you want to be one of the first people to do Amazon ads?" And I was like, "Interesting." Didn't know that was a thing. They had me watch like one video of some seller who was talking about how he did, $1 million out of his garage, and like this guy looked like he didn't know anything. And I'm like, "Yep, that's it." Like if that guy,
I want to do that. If that guy can make $1 million out of his garage, I am gonna smoke him.
yep. And so it was funny because early days of Amazon, like I had a chance to go like account manager route, which was at the time like more operations. I'd say like Amazon focus, which was huge. Nobody knew how to set up a listing or do anything back in the day, right? I stuck on the advertising path because they only did 550 million in ad rev the first year that I started, right? But I saw the writing on the wall, and I'm like, this is not going to be the case. So I'm going to get as good as I possibly can at advertising so that when this is a $70 billion a year business, I'm the best, or I'm somebody that knows this way better than everybody else. And so I just experimented. My boss, after 3 weeks, literally said, "You can stop asking me questions. You already know more than I do at this point. Like, just go." And like, that's how I knew about you guys or Seller Labs back in the day. I was just content hungry. Like anybody that put anything
You
out.
already know more than I do. That's like kind of terrifying.
It was scary, but it was the best thing he could have done for me because he let me loose, right? He let me gave me the autonomy. I had a decent budget. It was $30,000 a month in spend I had, which doesn't seem like that much, but CPCs were 5 cents a click. So 30K was like having $300,000, $400,000 in spend with no competition. And I figured out how to rank a product spending $300. I made it the number one product in the beauty category. And I lost my mind. I'm like, no way, I can do this. Like, this is crazy. Now to try to do that would cost you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to test because CPCs are so expensive, right? And you don't know that it's going to work and you have somebody to report into. So yeah, it was cool. And then basically from there, I remember after 4 months, I used to go on these walks because everybody else was older and I was 21, during lunch. And one day I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, this is it. This is the business that will this is the industry that will tie in my skill sets into actually being able to make money. Right. And so from there, it's most of what I was doing was just a path that I laid out. Right. I'm like, okay, my goal here is to sharpen management skill sets. Right. So eventually I wanted to build a team. I actually brought my brother in from LA. I was like, move to San Diego. I don't even have a job for you, but we're going to need to know how to do this together later at some point in life. And that was, he's my VP of ops and just smacks around. So it's good. Long-term planning.
Okay. So many questions. As it becomes more apparent that this is going to it's not only going to work, but it's going to take off. You're now at 38 employees. Let's just touch briefly on that. When so one of my favorite things and least favorite things about an agency is it doesn't scale on technology. It scales on people. And so I have found that many different mental capital tools. So SaaS companies, yeah, they scale a lot more on technology. Info products, yeah, they scale on your distribution channel and how good the copy is or good the content is. But service-based businesses, vast majority scale on people. And I found, I don't know about you, but if you're building a tower think back to when you were 5 and you were choosing which blocks to use. People are like the oddest shaped block that you could, like, if you're like, oh, technology, this is a square block, right? Oh, info product, this is a rectangle block, right? Like, no problem. And then they're like, okay, now we want you to scale an agency, and this is actually a sphere. Could you stack those for me? Oh my gosh, it was so hard. So you have 2 people, you're diving in. When did you decide, uh-oh, we probably need another person here, and how's this going to work?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So obviously we went to no clients, then I did our first, I did the second, like a week or two later, right? And so we had I'd say once we started to grow quickly, but reasonably from a pace perspective. So I knew my first ad hire I wanted to make already was somebody I'd been working with for 8 years, right? Since he went with me from my first company to my next company to this one, right? So I knew he was going to come. I knew my brother was going to come at some point there too. But I started with like an intern. And one thing that I was fortunate about enough during my before I started the company was I did take roles where I like trained people up that were brand new, had never touched Amazon in their life, and taught them to be experts in Amazon, right? So I knew that there was a training process or a scaling process needed to be created there. But I will say it's tough, right? We've been in business for 4 years. We scaled really quickly. We hired probably a little too slow initially, right? Got a lot of cash in, a lot of profitability coming in. You're feeling great. One of the issues that I personally had is that I'm really good at sales, but I'm also really good at execution. And so I was doing both, right? So we were I was a founder led, like super stuck in everything for a little while. And then, yeah, there's that moment where you're like, okay, like you literally cannot grow because there's not enough hours in the day if it's just me, right? Like there. So I need to scale the ability for the team to scale itself, right? Was kind of the biggest thing. So our second year, we got very aggressive. I hired like 15 people that year. And so my idea was to basically get a critical mass of, or really by hiring enough people, we could train everybody at the same time, right? And so even people that are experienced, SUG has its own sort of unique methodology that we leverage. So I have to retrain people as well, right? So there's definitely like year 2 margin wise sucks, absolutely horrible garbage, right? But I made that investment knowing future growth was coming, right? So I'd rather take the hit on the short term now while we have cash flow coming in so that I have the team that's built for when I'm ready to really scale, right? And so year 2 was super fun, ugly. Like we grew a lot, but like I didn't pay myself for, I don't know, maybe 8 months that year, right? Like, so my crypto nest egg definitely helped, support it, but now it's all worked out, right? Like I call myself the chief learning officer for a reason, right? It's because my intention is to create an environment where our employees are really using our clients to train and to learn and to get better, right? The other thing, like I do a lot of like, I don't know, inspirational type stuff with the team. Like I've been meeting every other week, and like my big goal for them is to understand like this is not like SUG is not their story, right? It's a chapter of their book, right? And we get to take part of their time. But my goal is to, if an employee is here, they should grow. They should end up at a better position than when they start.
Than when they started.
And I think that's why we've been sticky, been able to, you mentioned the spheres, like employees are like spheres, right? It's not always so black and white and so simple, right? And the other thing I think is important to think about, they don't think the same way as you, right? You are your own person, you have your own goals and perspective. And that was an important lesson for me too, right? Because there's a point where I'm like, oh, everyone wants the same things I want, right? But
it's funny, Daniel, you mentioned that, like that's, so I have to mention this briefly because this is one of the things that I love doing. I actually, as an entrepreneur, I tried to clone myself multiple times. First, by hiring 7 different VAs, had to fire all of them because none of them thought like me. I brought on this amazing, more of a personal assistant through an agency, and she was fantastic. I promoted her to be the GM. It didn't work out. Like there was too much stress. There wasn't enough structure. I hadn't created a great environment for her. That didn't work out. So I lost not only my PA, but also her, the GM. I'd been through this journey of trying to clone myself so many times I couldn't see straight. And that's what I do now. I do an entrepreneur's apprentice program where I've actually figured out how to find young entrepreneurial talent who do think like me. And I pair them together with solopreneurs and they like go off into the sunset. Because you're right, like the average employee does not think like you. It's amazing how different their mentality is.
Yeah. And I think the thing that you mentioned that's awesome, it's like everybody has their strengths. How do you put the strengths together? Right. That's really when I think of an agency and like, this mental capital piece. I gain more mental capital by taking parts of my business and scaling them with other folks, right? One mistake that I see a lot of folks do, especially like running their own business, they want to do everything, right? It's like, I want to do my own accounting and, I want to like do these things. And it's like, yeah, like maybe you save a couple dollars on whatever, like, okay, I have an accountant that I pay this much. But what is that worth? What is your mental time worth, right? When you're working on something that you're not good at, it's not something that like you have to struggle to push through this piece. Like ultimately you should focus your time on the areas that like really flow, right? And you're strong at it. You get really, where you're strong, it allows other folks to take over those weak parts for you, right? And I think that's huge. Like it's not weak to not do everything, right? It's actually stronger to know where you should focus your efforts. That's going to benefit you a lot more in the long run.
I love it. Okay, so next question I like to ask guests. Imagine that you could go back in time and you could talk to you, and we're going to go back to like the kid who just did the homecoming thing. He just did the social capital thing. He's the homecoming king. We're also going to assume that he's mature enough to accept any advice you give him and he'll actually take it to heart. So if you could make that phone call, if I handed you a cell phone that could call that guy and tell him something that might help him monetize his mental capital more quickly, what'd you tell him?
I would say concentrate on the learning. I know back in the day when I was at that stage of my life, I wanted to make six figures so bad. That was it, right? I was like, I need to make six figures. That's, I was concentrating on this 100,000. I didn't think about the path to get there. Once I figured out the path to get there, that $100,000 was actually like a really small target for what I wanted, right? So I think that's the advice, like, because it almost blocks you sometimes from making the right decisions or doing the right actions because you're so overwhelmed with this end goal sometimes. I think, yeah, like concentrate on the path to get there would have been my advice to myself. Like I didn't do internships when I was in college. Like if I knew I was going to do Amazon, I would have gone into like a digital thing, right? Or those kind of things. Right?
Well, I think internships and like focusing young on getting out there in the world, like seeing what's going on outside of school, seeing what's going on outside, what are the trends, what are the pieces, experiencing them so that you know what you like. I think pushing yourself to, so some of the youngest people, most successful young people I've ever met are the ones who have either been invited by their parents or have gone themselves and had to face some of these different challenges. So like, I'm trying to push my daughter like this, like crazy. We even did a loan. Like she actually wanted to make some chapstick and sell it. And so like we wrote out on a piece of paper the terms of the loan and she had to put her camera, she has like a Polaroid camera, down as collateral. And I was like, if you don't pay back the loan, then you can earn it back. And we gave her some chores that she could do to earn back what's there. But if you don't do the chores, then I get your camera to cover this thing. And she was like, what do you mean you get my camera? And I was like, I need collateral. I'm not loaning you money without collateral. And she was like, she's like 9.
That's
well, 10.
So fun. I love that you did that, dude.
Well, I'm trying to think through like, how can I push her to do that? So I think we all have to challenge ourselves, our younger selves, those around us that are younger, to get out there and experience.
No, I would agree with that. So
how things roll.
My first job out of college in San Diego, because no one would hire me, I did like I was in a multi-level marketing thing and I was selling makeup door to door, like wearing a suit or whatever. And I always talk about that with my team because while it was a silly job, my job was to get 300 no's a day, right? Like that's what they would say. So if you get 300 no's a day, you'll get your 5 yeses. And so even though it was like, hard, it's embarrassing, it's awkward when you walk out and do that. Like it did teach me a lot in the sense of like, nothing bad is going to happen to you when you do sales. The worst thing that somebody says is no or whatever. And you're like, cool, smile, walk away, go to the next person, you make your sales. And so I find those kind of experience, I think getting early experiences on those kind of things are helpful for sure.
So, I mean, on the aspect of 300 no's a day, I have done so much cold calling. I have done so much. So, I actually served a 2 year mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So
So
you definitely got, yeah, you got some of those.
we got told no thousands and thousands of times because we were stopping people on the street right and left, inviting them to hear more about the message and get in there. Man, did we learn how to receive some of those no's. And it's actually funny because summer sales, like technology companies, like the guys who are selling security systems or pest control, they have major epicenters here in Utah because there are so many people who
That
used
actually
to
makes
serve.
sense. Yeah, they're built for it. They know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got some. So if you're ever looking for like kick trash salesman and he says, "Oh yeah, I served a 2 year mission, out preaching the gospel," that guy knows how to sell because
He doesn't risk
he's had
miles.
to deal with that rejection. I love that. I love that. Okay, final questions for the episode. One, you're gonna step into an elevator in your mind with a guy, and the guy next to you says, "I'm an Amazon seller, do 8 figures on Amazon. What do you do?" So you got 60 seconds to tell him about whatever you want to tell him about. Okay. And then right after that, you're going to share with me any tips, tricks, hacks, or books you've come across in the last year that have helped you monetize your mental capital. So first, we're going to do the 60-second pitch. And then after that, I want to hear any tips, tricks, hacks, or books you've come across in the last year that have helped you monetize your mental capital.
Cool. Okay. So 60-second elevator pitch. I run an agency called Straight Up Growth. We help brands to grow on Amazon. We'll do over close to $1 billion this year on the Amazon platform with the brands that we work with. We leverage data analytics, technology, and forecasting abilities to create what we call predictable growth. So for us, we don't have a one size fits all solution. We basically create a custom tailored piece based on the goals that you want, right? We're also not just, I'd say, executors, right? We really come out from a strategic standpoint. So what to sell, when to sell it, which items should be your top sellers, what kind of KPIs should you hit? And when you need to get more money from your board, we're the guys that actually go ahead and do those things for you guys. Yeah, that's my little pitchy.
I like it. I like it. I like it. You're about out of time there. So jump into
Mental capital. So
mental capital. So tips, tricks, hacks, or books you've come across in the last year that have helped you monetize your mental capital.
So mental capital, if there are skills that are anything that's a repeatable task that doesn't require your brain power, try to offload it there because it's not worth it for you. I also like to say, take a step back from things from time to time, right? When you are too tired or too overworked or too stressed, as somebody who's done 14-hour days that gets nothing, you are less efficient, right? And you actually don't get as many ideas that come through. And I think that's one of the magic pieces of mental capital is like that ability to improve. And that doesn't happen if you don't have anything left in the tank, right? Otherwise, you're going to be doing the same thing. But really, the growth comes from innovation, and innovation only comes when you have the time or the energy to innovate.
Love it. Any books you'd recommend?
Honestly, I have not read anything in a little bit here. I am a podcast guy more than anything else. There's a podcast I've been listening to from the Snapchat Mafia that I'm like obsessed with. I got to figure out the name. Like Taking Inventory. I really, really like it.
Taking Inventory from the Snapchat Mafia.
Snapchat Mafia.
Love it. Love it. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. It was a pleasure.
Really fun time. Really good time to learn.